Hello students and welcome to Year 11 Biology and Module 2, Organisation of Living Things. This is video 19 and we're looking in a little bit more detail at the cardiovascular system. What students specifically need to do is to investigate transport systems in animals and plants by comparing structures and components using physical and digital models, including but not limited to the cardiovascular system. So what we're going to have a bit of a look at are some of the structures in the cardiovascular system, and also to see if we can understand what the functions of each of these key components is. So to start us off, the cardiovascular system literally refers to the heart and the blood vessels. Cardio is a reference to heart, and vascular is a system of tubes that transport materials around the organism. And we talked about vascular tissue when we were looking at plants as well. So this means that we've got those three key components that we talked about in the macro structures relating to transport in animals, which are firstly blood, and there's a separate video looking at the components of blood. This is the circulating fluid which flows to all parts of the body. Then we have the blood vessels. So these are the pipes that transport the fluid, and they consist of one of three types: the arteries, the veins, or the capillaries. And finally, our heart, which is our pump, that's going to drive the blood all around the body. There's a great little magazine called Understanding Biology, and there's another version, Understanding Human Anatomy, and I've taken a few of the diagrams from these because they're outstanding and are really lots of good information in them as well. But you can see here, if we're talking about the cardiovascular system, you can see a nice comparison between the arteries and the veins. You can detect the valves that are present in the veins and also the difference in the thickness of the walls between arteries and veins. And remember, we've talked about arteries are the ones that take blood away from the heart, and the veins are the ones that bring blood towards the heart. Sometimes you find the description relating to oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Now, this is generally true. However, the arteries which take the blood away from the heart towards the lungs are not oxygenated. The blood has to pass through the lungs in order to be oxygen enriched before it actually becomes oxygenated. So there's an exception to the general rule of oxygenated blood in arteries and deoxygenated blood in veins. The pulmonary arteries and veins are exceptions to those rules. The other important component of the blood vessels are the capillaries, and these are very, very small. They're 1 cell thick. They are located in the alveoli or across the alveoli, which allows exchange to occur between the alveoli or the lungs tissue, the inside of the lung tissue, which is basically the external environment that we've breathed into our lungs, and then that diffusion across the membrane into the blood. Some of that oxygen, for example, may actually go into the blood itself, and a lot of it will combine with the hemoglobin in the red blood cells. And you get that kind of idea of exchange happening, and we'll again look at that in a little bit more detail. The two key gases, of course, here are oxygen and carbon dioxide, where that major exchange is occurring. And of course, the exchange is the reverse if we're thinking about what's actually happening in terms of the net movement of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the alveoli or across the alveoli, as opposed to what might be happening with the capillaries that surround muscle cells, for example. The other thing about our heart is it's a one-way circuit. So it allows blood to move through those vessels in a single direction. There are valves in the heart as well as in the veins to try and reduce the chances of the blood flowing in the wrong direction, and also that very high pressure that's generated from the pumping action of the muscular heart through those arteries also helps to ensure that blood continues to move in one direction and circulate throughout our body. If we then look at the key functions of the cardiovascular system, well, there are 4 really significant functions of our cardiovascular system. And of course, the first one is transportation. That's kind of the point of where we've put it into this particular topic. Our third inquiry question relates to transport systems in living things, and so the cardiovascular system is primarily a transportation system for food and wastes. It's also about exchange of gases, but it's also about transport of gases as well, because we are going to be moving those gases from one place to another, from one type of cell to another throughout the body, and those exchanges are going to be occurring in different ways in different places. The cardiovascular system also has an important role to play in fighting infections, and it works very closely with the immune system. And in fact, we'll look at both the second and third line of defense of the immune system and see lots of involvement that overlaps with our cardiovascular system. And one other important function that the cardiovascular system has is in regulating body temperature. So we also know things like bringing blood to the surface in a process known as vasodilation. Makes my face look red if I've been exercising. A lot of that blood will then come near the surface, and as I perspire, it will cool my skin, but also cool the blood underneath. Or if I'm out in the cold, the reverse will happen, vasoconstriction. And that means that I'll start to look quite pale, actually, as the blood is basically moving away. That means that I'm already cold, so I want to try and conserve heat. Basically, my extremities are not as important as my vital organs. So my body's going to move blood away from those extremities, away from the skin, so it's not going to be further cooled, and try and keep those vital organs warm. Another really good diagram from our magazine, Understanding Biology, is this one. There is an average of about 5.5 litres of blood flowing through the body. So that is basically what is missing from this little did you know over here. But you can see a little bit of a relationship between the heart itself, the primary blood vessels that are coming into and out of the heart, and the branching that occurs as blood is moved up to the head, up to the brain, but also down to many of the vital organs that are part of the torso and into the arms and the legs. So you can see that there's some very important structures that are part of the cardiovascular system, and also some critical functions that we can see that are also part of this very important transport system. Thanks for watching.